So hi everyone, my name is Amna Khan and I am joined here by my colleagues Anna Leah, Caitlin Olivia Gooch, and Sabika Zera, and we will be speaking to you about copyright infringement in Canada. So to start off with my favorite question, why? Why talk about copyright infringement, especially on a Friday afternoon? Well, it has important implications. First of all, it can really affect the growth of the digital economy and the growth of the regular traditional economy. And another important implication of copyright infringement is that it can adversely affect the public interest. Specific ways in which it does this is that it can discourage innovation and it can impede the knowledge diffusion across public. It can reduce the competitiveness of the economy, making it harder to attract and retain local business and international businesses. And in terms of trade, it can affect the global value chains that Canada is part of, specifically important because Canada is part of the OECD and it is the only G7 country with trade agreements with all other G7 countries. All of these factors are exacerbated by the spread of the internet and digital technologies, and this is particularly important in light of the government's focus on working on its telecom and spectrum capacities with projects that even include 5G.
So the data we received came from a 2017 survey, which was self-reported, and we are cognizant of its limitations. The survey included 3,300 respondents who reported on their online consumption of copyrighted materials. These individuals were categorized by age, gender, region, income, employment, language, and attitudes, which allowed us to identify trends specific to certain groups.
We analyzed all the determinants of consumption of copyrighted content. However, only two were significant to the legality of consumption. The first is behind me, is age. So respondents who consumed a mix of legal and illegal content online, so the green bar, were more likely to be 18 to 34 years of age. And those who consumed exclusively illegal content, the gray bar, are more likely to be between 35 and 54. The second significant determination of consumption of copyrighted content was income. So surprisingly, the group with the highest proportion of solely illegal content consumption, the gray bar, had an annual income of over $100,000 a year. And the group with the highest proportion of mixed legal and illegal content consumption, so the green bar, had an annual income of between $40,000 and $59,000. We compared the differences in legality across the types of copyrighted content. Movies and computer software are the highest for any illegal and mixed illegal and legal consumption, while ebooks are the lowest for the same categories. However, as you can see, the trends in consumption are very similar across all different types of content, with any differences being within around 6% of each other. In the end, 5% of any content consumption online is solely illegal, and consumption that is solely legal makes up 74% of any content consumption online. Finally, the survey looked at attitudes of respondents. So the main motivators that we found were for illegal content consumption online is that illegal content is free, it's easy and convenient, and that it's easy to access or quick to access.
So, as my colleague mentioned, some interesting trends came up. It was clear that this is not a matter of affordability. People who consumed solely illegal content were in an income bracket of over $100,000. So our approach to this, our primary recommendation would be run an educational campaign, run an awareness campaign. Inform the people about the rights of the creators, tell them that this amounts to stealing someone's work. This is theft. Based on a lit scan, a literature review, and this data as well, so we don't think the problem of copyright infringement is particularly severe in Canada. We don't think it requires very drastic policy interventions. But however, in the future, if it does become a political priority, we'd suggest that we review the roles of the ISPs, the intermediaries, the internet service providers. The ISPs need to be more responsible for the content that they put out. This would put us into an internet freedom of speech debate. So to avoid that, they can use non-monetary measures to ensure compliance. For example, halting services for repeat offenders. And finally, we'd want to create an enforcement office as part of the Copyright Act, because an act does not really have teeth until you have proper enforcement that go along with it. Thank you.
I mean, you're just giving Mark such great recommendations. I'm not sure we should be responsible for policing the internet, though.
What's interesting is the policing seems to be everybody's policy, and at the moment we have departments, and the government has departments chasing people. But the quick access, I think, was a very interesting stat there. It was 34%, is that right? Okay. What about a policy around that one? I still strongly believe, and we see, the easier it is to buy content. You know, everybody stole music in the Napster days, and now with Spotify, the numbers have really changed. So I just wonder whether or not there's some policy recommendation you have there.
So that is why we sort of talked about redefining the role of the ISPs. We would not want to undertake the enforcement by the government, but we want to oversee that the ISPs are doing enough to make it more difficult, slower, and maybe even expensive, not in terms of money, but in terms of time for people to access cheap content, free illegal content. So we recommend halting services, sending the notice by notice policy that exists right now, backing it up with some other non-monetary measures. But as you say, 75% of all the content sourced today is legal. So we don't think something drastic is needed on the policy front.
Any other quick question? Neil? Yeah. Sorry, I'm just reaching across. Sorry about that.
I'm trying to think of another area where crime is linked, higher incomes lead to higher crime, and the only examples I can think of is white collar crime, and I'm wondering if there's any examples. The other one would be tax evasion. If there are any policy lessons that you think it would be worthwhile to look at tax evasion and white collar crime in terms of your policy recommendations.
We hadn't actually thought about looking at other crimes that do sort of follow those trends. We were a little sort of caught up because it is self-reported data and it is a survey and it only happened one time. So there are a lot of limitations that come with self-reporting, where it might be that people in lower income brackets were more concerned about repercussions of actually reporting that they were doing these things illegally, and concerned about potential monetary sort of infractions coming their way. So we're not entirely sure why it is that these people in like the highest income bracket were saying that they are solely consuming content illegally online, but it was something that was really interesting because we never thought of it that way. So yeah.
Just to add on to that, I think something that would really enable comparisons is also in line with one of the recommendations that the parliamentary committee made, which was to Statistics Canada to actually gather data on this, on the economic effect of infringement as well. And I think if we had that to kind of build into comparisons, we would be in a position to compare with other crimes which follow that trend. But as of now, we simply didn't have the data.
Thank you. Excellent job. Well done. Next group.